Alison Collington is with me just now to talk about Victim Support Scotland and your job, can I call it that? Role?
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like a proper job.
You're an in-court supporter. But let's get to know you a little bit, Alison.
Sure.
You've been in Scotland for 3 years. You were in London, I think, before that. Tell us about your career and how you got here.
Yes. So my career started at Thomas Cook for the holiday company. And I joined to my aspiration was really, I loved the idea of being in holidays and travel. And I joined on the retail side. I think, you know, as my career's progressed, I am a people person. So what drew me was working with the public. And my career started right from the bottom. I was on the, as it was called then, on the counter sales. But I was always interested in management. I'm a Leo, so I guess I like to move up. I don't quite like receiving orders all the time and direction. So I moved through the ranks fairly rapidly and went into management. And I worked in all sorts of different branches of Thomas Cook. And my final branch manager was actually opening a superstore, which was a brand new initiative at that time in Kingston. And I managed about 35 people. And I enjoyed that part of it. And then really I felt I wanted to move direction. I didn't want to be a regional manager. And the opportunity came for me to move into central London, work for business travel, which was an arm of Thomas Cook at that time. And I worked in managing senior accounts, so account management with the likes of Goldman Sachs, Ernst & Young, HSBC. And at that time, unbeknown to me, Thomas Cook was actually preparing to sell, and they sold to American Express. So I had to reapply for my job because obviously at that moment, all the company structure changed. And we all went through interviews for our roles at the time. And I was quite surprised with myself that I actually got through those interviews and was nominated as a regional director for American Express. So I then moved out of London into the southwest of England, and I managed a whole region for American Express, again, working for the corporate travel side and managing large customers as well as staff at that time. And then there was a lot of travel, a lot of dedication involved. And I decided after a while that I really wanted to take a step back and have some family, which I did. And really from there, I decided not to go back to that job because there was just too much demand for my time. And I looked at other opportunities. And when I was working in the corporate world at that moment, I found that there was no provision for maternity wear. So for a while, I actually ran my own maternity business, selling maternity wear. So that was a sidearm. And then that took me in all sorts of directions. And I worked with some well-known people, advising them what to wear on television. And I was sourcing clothes for them, which was interesting. But then I decided that I wanted to actually stand back from that because that no longer really interested me, if I'm honest, once I'd had my children and moved on from that. And I became interested in looking at what else I could do, and charity work seemed to feel to me that was something I'd always been interested in, and I had an opportunity to look at it. I started off with my children's school, and I ran the Parent Teachers Association for a couple of years, got my teeth into that, thought that was interesting. And then I moved on to working with a charity that was working with schools in bringing business into schools. So I was combining, if you like, my understanding of business, my like of people, and wanting to bring something into schools that had something unique about it. So I worked with that until we moved to Edinburgh. I moved and did all sorts of different roles. I was a project manager for that in the end. And then when we moved to Scotland, that's an English charity. So I wasn't able to actually move over, transition that skill or that knowledge of with the charity. So that ended my relationship with the charity there. And when I came to Scotland, I really enjoyed so much working for charity that I thought, okay, what would I like to do that was different to what I'd already done? And I'd used a lot of the skills that I had when I started in business. My own business, I transferred onto the charity, working with schools. And there was a lot of entrepreneurship involved in that. And I just decided that that really no longer interested me. I'd always had somewhere in my head that I really would have liked to have worked in county courts as a magistrate. And when I came to Scotland, I realised the system's very different. But what interested me, what drew me into it, was I came to Scotland, knew nothing about Edinburgh, the people properly, and I felt that I really wanted to give back, but perhaps I could combine that by looking at what was around with the courts, and that's really how I ended up working for victim support. So, you know, quite a varied career path, but you know, learning a lot along the way. And I know that people is at the heart of everything I wanted to do, or that was where I started.
But what diversity! Amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. I had no idea. So tell me a bit about a day in court. How does
Yes.
that, what do you do? I find this so fascinating.
Yeah, so we have quite a lot of training in advance, which I did over COVID. So that was online. So the real thing is obviously very different. So
how did that manifest itself? What was your training?
It was a lot of some of it was obviously Zoom calls with various training. Some of it is actually self-learning, and just learning about the court system, Scottish law, becoming more trauma informed about, you know, the people that we'll be working with, and understanding how we can best navigate the system to work for everyone. And I guess, you know, when you begin your day in court, the first thing you know is it's not going to be a perfect day, because the courts are not perfect. The system, the justice system, is not perfect. And I would say that my role on the day is to help people who arrive on the day to give their evidence. We only support certain people. So my role is to support people who've suffered from sexual abuse, domestic abuse, who have been racially abused, trafficking, murder, something where there is a lot of trauma involved, and they need someone to be an advocate, a supporter on the day. We don't know a lot about the people before they arrive. We will know a little bit which offence that they're a victim of, but we know very little about them as people. We know their age, and we also support children right the way through to, you know, whatever age. And so we have a name, we have various names that we will be working with, and we need to meet them, introduce ourselves, and then the next bit is the most difficult, because we cannot guarantee their day in court. We're at the mercy of a system that is subject to a lot of delays, and obviously COVID has still had quite an impact in the courts, and there's a lengthy queue of people. So some people we will meet have been waiting for their time in court for years. Some people it's months. It just depends on where they are in the system. So I guess the main support we offer is empathy. And so when they come in, we will sit with them, introduce ourselves, and wait to see where their day lands and what happens next.
How long
That's
is
my role.
Typically, how long would you be with somebody giving that support?
It can be all day. It can be a couple of hours. It just depends on what happens next for them. I always describe it really as, it's almost like Harry Potter sorting hats. You know, what you do not know what is going to happen next, and you just have to wait. I always describe it to people as hospital time. So you check in, and then you're at the mercy of the court system and the time clock of the courts. There's two courts, obviously, Sheriff and High Court, and I actually volunteer for both. High Court is different. Sheriff Court is really what I've been describing to you. High Court is very different. We're on a timeline, because obviously that represents more serious cases, and they are absolutely or 90% going to go ahead on that day. So we know when we meet the person there, it's almost certain to happen. So Sheriff Court is very uncertain, and so we learn to navigate our language around that scenario. And then High Court is very much meeting people, and clearly those people are probably the most traumatized people, so we're very careful and select our language, and obviously try and connect early on. And it is a privilege, because clearly what they're doing with us is sharing something that their families may even not, or their nearest friends, relatives may not even realize what's happened to them. It can be historic. So we're kind of becoming a best friend in a very short amount of time, and that's where we help them. So a day will vary. Our role is to support them in court. We're not able to talk to them, but we sit beside them when they give their evidence. But that can be varied. It can be in court, it can be through CCTV, and also, which is becoming much more, much happening many more times at High Court, where it's on commission. So that is where if it's very traumatic for the person to come in to court, they can be offered an option where they go into a small room. It's pre-recorded, and the judge, the advocate depute who represents the Crown, the defence counsel, myself, and one more person from court sit in a room around a table. No wigs or anything else is worn except everyday clothes, which obviously is not the case in High Court, and it's filmed. So it's a court case per se, and that's filmed. And then when the case takes place, that's played in court in front of the jury, and it's the same judge, the same advocate depute, the same defence counsel. So it represents their time, but it's pre-recorded to give them some safety.
That could be quite traumatizing to hear some of this and listen to people. Are you personally given some support?
We can, yeah. If I need to, I can. I always talk about it afterwards. There's always someone in the office available in person. So we do discuss what's the outcomes of that. But I guess you have to, I think, if I'm honest, I do honestly feel very privileged to be with that person. It's not my trauma, and I've learned that is therefore I can feel for them as a person, but I'm not going through that with them. That hasn't happened to me. So I'm very careful about how I process that information. There are some cases that it feels quite hard once you walk out the door and you've left the court to actually forget. But my job is not to remember, it's to help and support and be the right person in that room at that time that they need. So I remember that, and I go back to the next day or whenever I'm next scheduled to be there, and I honestly have been able to take that day away from myself. I don't think I could do it if I couldn't.
So and hear the outcomes of the cases that you sit with people.
Yes, we're told only in High Court, not in Sheriff, because we might sit with 3 people in a day, and it's just so many people that's not reported. But for High Court, because we do find out, and I guess my job satisfaction is when I go in after a court case and I see the word guilty. We have a wipe on, wipe off board. It's not a sort of tally, but we just, on a monthly basis, we record it out. All the outcomes are recorded. And when I see a guilty verdict, there's a sense in satisfaction. And, and obviously if it isn't guilty, you feel very, very sorry for the person that's obviously had to give the evidence. And you remember, what happened in the room. But, I have to accept that, I can't change the justice system by doing what I do. What I can change is that person's day, hopefully, in some way, and make them feel human and cared for, and that I show as much empathy with them as I can, although it's, obviously I have no way if I experience what they have.
So, tell me what skills do you feel that you bring to that particular role that you have?
I think life experience is very important. So I do feel I can help if I have an experience that I have, I've got to a certain age, and you can sometimes understand. I haven't obviously had to go through any court cases, but I can understand sometimes, if they speak to me and I think, yes, I can only imagine what it's like, but I have some maturity to bring. I really do think I've become a better listener, and that's something I've learned from the role that I have, which maybe sometimes in life, when you get to that stage in your life, perhaps you aren't as good as a listener because you feel like you've done it all before, you've heard it all before. So I'm very I would say I want to show them what that I really do care about them, that it's not a job for me. And they're always very surprised if I don't say much about why I'm in the room, how I came to be there, but they're always very surprised that I'm a volunteer. but I don't tell them that at all, because, you know, for them, I'm a person that's there, and they're always quite surprised that I volunteer to do this. They can't believe that I would want to.
Oh.
So, and I'm very drawn to people, and I feel I've been able to live a life well, and there are lots of people who are not living well, and I would like them to feel that they are cared for. I'm not a white knight in charging armor. I can't make a difference to their lives going forward. So I guess, you know, the biggest part of us is helping them to make conversation. They may not want to talk about anything to do with the court case at all. We have lots of explaining to do at the beginning with them about what will happen in court, how the system works. So there are some procedures that we need to explain to them. But once that's over with, I'm very careful that I wait to see their cues. I've learned to listen to what their cues are. Do they want to talk about what's going on? A lot of them think that we know everything about them. We know nothing. Sometimes the only time I find out what's actually happened and why they're there is in court when I'm sitting next to them. And that's the first time I hear about the case.
So I think we could put caring as one of the traits, really.
Yes.
So you've got life experience, becoming a really good listener, and caring. Anything?
Yes. I think as well, it's helping them after. What do they do next? So I'm not there to coach them about the rest of their lives, but, you know, going forward from the day, helping them to think, what are their choices? Because some of them are completely exhausted at the end of their evidence and on what they've given. And it's just trying to give them some time to talk to me, and help them perhaps think about other options that they can do next. Do they want to speak to someone? Because we offer a community service where we can give them counselling. So sometimes it's helping direct their thoughts into where, and they are very vulnerable at the end of their evidence. And some of them just want to leave the building. So I think that's, again, it's an understanding of what they want from me. And sometimes it's just a big hug. And I ask their permission. And that is all they needed, because they've been in a courtroom and it's felt very inhuman.
Yes.
Very, you know,
thought, very distant from any experience they might have had.
Yes, and I think, you know, their expectations, I mean, some of them tell me they watch Judge Judy and other programs about crime on television as their homework. And I'm very keen to tell them it's not like that. And there is a lot, it's got a lot better. Etiquette is in the room. You know, they're expecting people to come up to them and bang the table in front of them, and none of that happens. So it's trying to take away some of their, I ask them, you know, what do they expect? And then hopefully giving them a brighter side. It's not, you know, yes, they will be cross-examined, but it's not up close and personal. And the judge is very much controlling what happens in the courtroom. So High Court is probably an easier one to navigate, although it's, you know, you're dealing with the most traumatic. Sheriff Court is much different, because it's fast moving, and, you know, they've got a timeline to get through many cases. So I guess from that we have to adapt our way of dealing with people, and it's a speedier process and less engaging. We probably spend less time with them. So it's navigating that, and still though, those people in Sheriff Court may have the same needs, quite rightly, as somebody in High Court, because their trauma is a trauma. So, you know, it's doing as much as we possibly can on the day. And sometimes they need police protection. So again, it's, you know, if that's what we need to do, we will make sure that, you know, they're unseen. We can meet them, you know, in special places. We can ask police to support us, and the staff are really good. They understand that. So, you know, we've always got support if we need it.
Alison, this is fabulous. I mean, I knew nothing about the service, and it really is quite spectacular. So if people have lots of glorious life experience like you, who could be a good listener, be caring, be a guide as well, yes, for people, and be a hugger.
Yeah, I think, you know, you again though, you have to be very careful with the hugging, because some people
prepared to hug.
Absolutely. Yeah, but I am a hugger, yeah, by nature. So, you know, sometimes I feel that is all that's more than words, right?
Indeed, I never thought that might be something you would want to put in a CV, prepared to hug.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, but
why wouldn't they be inspired by this? If somebody were inspired,
yes,
to do a similar thing, what do they do? Do they get in touch with,
yes,
Support Scotland?
Yes, victim support are always looking for people.
Oh, wow.
You know, and it is something. I mean, you can give as much time as you want to. I mean, I generally give. This week I've done 3 days. I usually do 2, but the norm is to volunteer for 1. They're very short-staffed, hence why I'm stepping up. If you can give 1 day a week, you know, and it isn't all day. It can be, if for example, the cases don't go ahead, you can actually finish before lunchtime, and you can be very flexible. So it's a monthly schedule, so you can give your dates that you're available, and it's built around you. So that's something. You don't have to give up a Wednesday, yeah, if that doesn't work for you. You can vary your dates. And I would say it's humbling, because what you don't realize is what's going on around you, you know, in the city. And you're learning a lot about other people's lives, and what, you know, we all know what we take for granted. And it's very humbling and awe-inspiring, quite frankly, to understand the lives they're living, what they're prepared to do to bring someone to justice. And we all know that system is hard to navigate. So they deserve, I always tell them, I'm full of respect for them, and I'm amazed that they've turned up today, and thank them. Because actually, coming to court, sometimes the accused will plead guilty. They don't expect that person to be there. So it's being brave and coming in is what. So really, it's about, if you really want to learn about other parts of society, and just, you know, it's an eye-opener, but it's also a terrific, I hate to use enjoy. I think when you give up your time, you need to feel that it's actually worthwhile. And that isn't saying I wouldn't do it if I didn't think it was worthwhile, but do I really want to do this? And the answer is yes, because I feel you give up time, and it's for a very good reason.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope other people will be inspired to do the same, and contact victim support, and they might be limited after this.
Well, if they go on the website, it's easy, and you don't have to be in court. You can also do community. Right. There's other options, so you can actually be on the other side of a phone. We do phone and speak to people before they attend court. We arrange court visits so they can come and familiarise themselves with the surroundings before they take part. So you can do that. If you're not comfortable being in front of people, you can do it with the, you know, on phones, which again is essential.
Fantastic. absolutely marvelous. Thank you so much for joining us.